In this video, I'm taking you through the end-to-end process of a recent client win for our AI automation agency. The customer was a boutique mediation law firm located in Austin, Texas, and we were hired to automate a piece of their outbound sales process, which relies heavily on cold email. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the full sales process, how we sourced the lead, qualified the opportunity, and ran discovery, as well as the full technical build, which includes a demo of the real automation and a node-by-node breakdown explaining how we built it. Watch to the end to get our full templates powering this automation that you can sell to other similar law firms, as well as the scripts and sales tactics that you can use to acquire new customers for your automations. All right, let's jump in. All right, the sales process. So to build any successful business, you need to create a repeatable sales process that wins customers. For us at The Recap, the process follows 4 steps. 1, lead sourcing. 2, qualification. 3, discovery. And 4, close. Let's take a look at how we applied this sales process to this law firm client. So step 1, lead sourcing. For any business, AI automation included, you need to have a repeatable way to identify great fit potential customers and a way to get in front of them. This can be referred to as sourcing leads. Now, there's dozens of ways to do this, but because our agency is young and just starting out, and hey, yours might be too, we're starting with warm outreach to our personal network for our lead sourcing. In the future, we'll build much more robust lead sourcing systems, and we'll cover how we do it on this channel. But for now, personal network is a really good starting point. So ask yourself, who do I already know that runs a business? Think dentists, lawyers, doctors, agency owners. Warm leads are always going to be easier to book, faster to qualify, and perfect for your first win, which becomes social proof for the next client. In my case, I have a friend in my network, Jason, who runs a niche mediation law firm. He works with insurance lawyers to settle disputes before they go to court. He's the decision maker, and law firms are notoriously full of manual processes, so it's a great candidate for my agency. So I reached out to him, told him what we're building, and asked if he'd be open to exploring automation in his practice. He was receptive, so we booked a qualification call. Step 2, qualification. So the goal of the qualification call is simple. Confirm there's a real problem we can solve and that it's worth both of our time to go deeper. Keep it short, 15, 30 minutes. And on the call, I'm looking for 4 things: fit, urgency, that I have the decision maker, and access to data. I asked Jason where the business feels slow or manual on the call, how he gets new mediation cases today, and where he's spending time that he wishes he wasn't. I also shared a quick overview of what we do here at The Recap. And within literally 10 minutes, we both saw clear opportunities, and specifically on the sales side for him, which was perfect for automation. That was enough for both of us to agree to schedule a more formal discovery call. The outcome of qualification should be binary. Schedule a deeper discovery or part ways. Step 3, the discovery call. All right, discovery is where you become the automation doctor. Your job is to understand the current manual workflows of a business in real life, not a summarized version. The rule here is simple: capture reality, not opinions. We set expectations up front for this call. Jason would walk us through exactly how he identifies new lawyers to build relationships with and how he contacts them so that they'll eventually refer him new mediation clients. This is one process that Jason does today to win new business. So we all jumped on a call, and Jason shared his screen and showed us one of his exact sales processes step by step. Because he practices law in Texas, he uses this Texas lawyer directory to find firms in insurance litigation. He then researches each firm, identifies individual attorneys that fit his area of expertise, and then adds them to a spreadsheet. Name, email, website, and any notes about them. Then from the spreadsheet, he sends them a cold email and works the lead. On this discovery call, anytime something felt hand-wavy, we asked Jason to go deeper. Which filters do you use in the directory? How do you verify emails? What makes one lawyer a good target versus a bad one? Where do the notes live? How do you track replies? Those details are the gold, as they all need to get built into the automation. Remember, clients don't know what's possible with this tech. So don't let them prescribe solutions. Have them show you their actual day-to-day, and then you synthesize and prescribe. So the sales process so far is 1, source warm leads from your network. 2, run a tight qualification call to confirm fit. And 3, conduct a show me discovery to capture the real workflow. Once we completed all of these steps with Jason and his law firm, we had a deep understanding of the current manual process he uses to identify and outreach to potential leads. With that information in hand, we were ready to bring the automation to life. Step 4, the close. Now, normally this would be the step where we present our offer to Jason and close the deal. We'd propose something like, hey, we can build you this full automation for $1,800 and then maintain it for you for $400 per month. But because this was one of our very first clients, we agreed to a lower rate if Jason was willing to be a testimonial for our business. In future videos, we'll walk through the exact close process in much more detail. So make sure to subscribe for future videos. Okay, so that concludes the sales process for this deal. But now let's jump into the actual automation we built for this client and a full breakdown of how we built it. All right, and here we are going to demo at a high level the build that we built for Jason and his law firm. So, quick context. One of the outbound sales tactic that Jason uses right now that he walked us through on the discovery call is he uses this insurance law section website, which is a member directory of all the insurance lawyers in Texas. Not all of them, but a bunch of them. And Jason practices in Texas. So what he showed us he does is he uses this to identify law firms that could be good fits for him to build relationships with, because the name of the game for him is to make friends with other litigation insurance attorneys so that they know him as a good mediation lawyer and they may want to use him in the future when they're trying to mediate a case. So what Jason does is he'll use this directory to identify a law firm. He'll then research that law firm, as you can see I'm doing here. And then he'll look to identify potential attorneys that match his area of expertise, which is insurance, litigation, mediation. So he'll literally go and start researching all of the attorneys listed on these law firms to see if this would be someone that would make sense for him to build a relationship with. And he does this by looking at what they explain their experience and their areas of expertise. Then Jason adds that lawyer to a spreadsheet that he maintains so that he can cold email them his pitch to them saying, hey, I'm Jason, I'm here local in Austin, Texas, and I mediate cases that you litigate all the time. And then he gets to know them, takes them out to lunch, and eventually they start sending him cases to mediate, which he makes money on. So that's a high level process, and so we can automate that very well with normal automation tooling and a lot of AI sprinkled in to make this super seamless. So let's walk through how this build works at a high level. Again, we'll dive deeper into each node by node section and how we built it in the next section of this video. So let's kick this workflow off and show how it works. So the first step is we're going to enter the URL for a page on this directory, which you can see here is just paginated here. So all we're going to do is copy paste that. We're going to paste that into the field here, and that is going to kick off this section of the workflow, which what this is doing is it's scraping the firms on this page and it's trying to land on a law firm because it's going to pass that law firm that it identifies into the next step of the workflow. But it's going to go through various scraping and clean up a lot of this data. It's also going to perform a check to see if we've already processed this law firm before so that we don't duplicate any data. And then if it is a law firm that we want to further research and identify specific lawyers for, it's going to pass it into this next step of the workflow, which is this process law firm website step. Okay, so once it's processed the firm, it will add it to this tab in this Google Sheet. And we can see that we've already ran this a number of times and it's processed a number of firms. So as it iterates over all of the firms listed on this page of the directory, it will then pass a firm that we deem appropriate into the second step of the workflow. So let's execute that here. So now what's happening here is the first step is we're scraping the entire website of the firm that the first step of the workflow passed through. And so here is the website. We can see this is a litigation firm here in Texas, and it has this tab of all the attorneys. So what the workflow is going to do is it's going to scrape all of the attorneys' details, and then it's going to iterate through each one of them, and it's going to perform a series of checks similar to what Jason does manually. So what it's going to do is it's going to pass the details of the attorney into a prompt that checks, does this lawyer match the area of expertise that we want to contact? Through that LLM call, it will either return true or false. And again, Jason's area of expertise is insurance litigation. And so if the lawyer does not practice that type of insurance litigation, we will pass back a false so that we don't wind up cold outreaching to someone who doesn't even match Jason's target persona. The next check we'll run is a check on the contact information, as we can see here. So sometimes we're not able to pull the exact contact details of an individual lawyer. They might just not have it populated on the website. So that's the last thing we're going to check. Of course, we don't want to send emails to generic law firm like contact us fields. We want the individual's specific email. Luckily, most law firms list this on the website, so it's fairly easy to snag that information. But if the individual email is true and the areas of practice match, then this is a good lead to contact. Lastly, we'll just draft a version of the email that Jason can send to this person, introducing himself and his firm. As you can see, this process that Jason used to do completely manually is now end-to-end automated. It's scraping relevant law firms from the insurance directory. It's researching individual lawyers associated with each of those firms to see if they're a fit for Jason's area of expertise. And then it's adding their full contact information, areas of practice, and whether they're a good fit to a spreadsheet that then we can document the cold outreach process from. So that is a high level demo of the build that we built for Jason's law firm. If you want to download this exact N8N template for free, we have it in our AI automation mastery community where thousands of other entrepreneurs, freelancers, agency owners are learning from each other the best practices to build AI automations like this. And you'll just go to the N8N template section, click on the video that you want to download the JSON from. This is the N8N template, and then you can download that completely free. So join our community. And with that, the next section of this video, we're going to go through the node by node build with Lucas of exactly how we thought through and built this workflow for Jason. Let's jump in.
All right, I want to kick things off by giving you guys a high-level overview of the systems we've built to power this insurance mediator lead gen system. This system is really split up into two separate components, the yellow one we have here and the green one here. System number one is going to be the high-level law directory scraper that's trying to pull out and extract a list of law firm names and the city they're based out of from this directory. And so the input to this is going to be a URL of one of these pages we have here. So I'm on page number 2 right now. We're going to take that URL, pass this into the system, and we're going to go ahead and use Firecrawl to pull out each of those law firm names, the city they're based out of, and any other details we need. After a law firm has been extracted, that's how we get into system number 2, where both components work together. So we scrape an individual law firm, and then inside this loop we have going here, we're going to go ahead and use this sub workflow trigger here to pass the law firm details into what we have here in green. This is going to be the workflow that operates on an entire law firm's website. And so we pass in the name of the law firm, their website, and we kick things off here to process everything that we can. What's happening here in system number 2 with our green workflow is going to be crawling that page using Firecrawl, mapping out each of the member and attorney profile pages that we can go ahead and find, extracting their information, and then running some AI analysis on each lawyer's individual profile to determine if it's a good match or not for our client. After all of that data has been extracted and we've made a decision if it is a good match, we're going to go ahead and save that information here into Google Sheets with all of that profile information that's been extracted, including their areas of practice, which is important for us to make a decision. And finally, we're going to save the result of those decisions, like is it an area of practice match for a legal mediator? So that gets saved. We do a little bit of additional validation on their contact info, like is this a real person's info we were able to extract? And then at the very end, once all that information is saved, we're drafting a cold outreach email for the person we're trying to get in touch with. And so we have this template filled out here that gets slotted in with the individual person's names. So that's what we've built here. Let's move forward into going through each of these components node by node so you can get a better understanding how everything gets pieced together. And I want to switch over here to N8N to take you guys through node by node for everything happening here in yellow for our process insurance law directory page, part of this full automation. The entry point and trigger for this is pretty simple. It's a form trigger that has a single field, which is going to be a single page on our directory from the insurance law section. And so I'll go ahead and copy the URL here. And what we're trying to do is, once again, scrape the law firm name and the city that law firm is located out of for part one of this automation. So I'm going to go ahead and select this here from our dropdown, execute the workflow, and let this get kicked off while I chat through what is happening on each part. So we got our input loaded in, which is going to be the page of our law directory. And now we're moving on to this FireCall node we've set up here that is going to call into the FireCall API to go ahead and scrape all of the data we can out of this directory page. For those of you not familiar, FireCall is this API and scraping platform that makes it really easy to pass in a URL and get back LLM-ready data in Markdown format for whatever you're trying to do. So you can get the raw text from a page for anything you're trying to scrape, and it also has this feature called Extract that allows you to get structured data out of any page on the internet. This is what we're going to be doing here on this part of the automation because we have this structured table on the page we're trying to scrape, and we know we need to get the company name and city out of this table. So if I come back here to N8N and load this up, the first thing I want to make mention is this is a community node here, the FireCall community node. And so if you don't have this option appearing when you search, make sure you have community nodes enabled on your instance. FireCall is verified, and you're going to get these actions here that appear when you load up the FireCall node. And so what I'm doing is when I load this up, I have this FireCall credential already created where I plugged in my API key for FireCall. And the operation I'm going to use here is scrape a page and get its content. Because I want to make use of the custom extract feature in FireCall, I am going to toggle on this use custom body option here that is going to allow me to specify raw JSON that is going to get passed into the request with it. You don't have to do this for every request you're making into FireCall, but because we need to use this extract feature where we pass in a prompt and the data we want to extract, we have to do it this way. And so just inspecting this request a little bit further, the required option we have to pass in is going to be the URL for the page we're trying to scrape. And so we can see by grabbing JSON from our trigger input and then asking for the directory page URL, we're going to get this dynamically inserted member directory page, which is of course page 2 from the directory we passed in. So that all looks good. The next part here, as I scroll down below, is going to be new to the FireCall v2 API endpoint. This is going to be where we specify the format of data we want to get back from FireCall. And in this case, I'm going to be asking for JSON data back, which signals to FireCall that, hey, we want to use this extract feature to get this custom schema back that we define instead of just the raw text on the page turned into Markdown. So the way you do this is open up your formats right here. You specify the type of data you want back as JSON, and then you're able to expand into a prompt and schema that you want to get back from FireCall. And so if I highlight this, the prompt we have set up here is going to be from the members table on this page, extract one object per visible row. For each row, capture 1, name of the company column, and 2, city from the city column. Use the exact visible text, exclude headers, UI like details, and blanks. Deduplicate exact repeats, so the same name and city, and return a top-level array of these objects. And so once that prompt's defined, we then expand into the schema we want to get back, which is really just defining a structured object that FireCall needs to return to us. And so the top level object we have here is going to be type of an array because we have a list of law firms on this page. We're not extracting a single firm. And then as I scroll down through here, we're going to define this as an array of multiple objects. And so it's not an array of string with just the name of the firm. It's an array of objects where each object has multiple properties. So underneath that, we then define our properties again, and we're going to have a string property for the name of the law firm we're trying to extract. And we define that by providing the name here. We're going to call it a type string. And by providing this description, we're going to tell Firecrawl what to look for on the page when we're trying to extract this data. We do that again for our city. So we define city. It's a type of string. And then underneath the description, we're going to say this is the associated city the firm is located in and based out of. And so by doing all of this and then adding in required fields for both the name and the city, we're defining this full schema for Firecrawl to go out and look for the page it's scraping. Down below here are some extra properties I define where I only want the main content returned. And so I don't care about the header or the footer being returned on the page. I only want Firecrawl to analyze and extract from the main body content. And then underneath the wait for, I am specifying 1,000 milliseconds here just to let the page load a little bit further in case there's some slow JavaScript executing on this page. Firecrawl has a ton of different options available for whatever you're trying to scrape. And so if you're hitting a case that you're not expecting or it's a bit more complicated to extract from, check out the Firecrawl documentation here, and then you can actually jump into scrape JSON mode and explore some of the other options available for extracting structured data. So that covers it here for step number 1 on our scrape and extract call. So if I load this up and look at the output here, we're going to see that this result was successful. And then when I scroll down below here underneath JSON, we're going to see this array that we asked for exactly how we want it. So we have many different law firms extracted from this page, and we have our city the firm is based out of and the name of the law firm. So this is perfect for what we're trying to accomplish here, and that means we're ready to move on to the next nodes for processing these firms one by one. So we're going to take this data and move on to a split node, which is going to split out this single array here of JSON that we're able to extract into multiple different items. And so we have our one single input item coming into this node, and we're splitting out 15 output items, one for each of the firms we were able to find and scrape from that page. Next up, we have this loop node here, or loop over items. So we're going to split up those 15 items into their own batch with a batch size of 1. That just means we're going to process each law firm one by one in a sequential series of steps. And so as we loop through and execute each of these nodes here, each node you see highlighted right now is going to get processed one time per number of input items that got passed in. And so we see the 15 input items that came into here. Everything here is going to get executed 15 times. So keep that in mind when you're looking through this, debugging and analyzing and working with that loop items and batches node. So once we enter this loop, we're going to go ahead and make an API call into a Google Sheet we've set up to go ahead and try and load up a firm and see if it's already been processed. This is so we can, keep our quota down, avoid duplicate data on any firms that may have appeared earlier in the list, and just makes the data set cleaner for a final output. So just quickly jumping over here to the Google Sheet we've set up, and I come underneath the Law Firms tab, we're going to see that we have our firm name, the city, the website, and a processed at date for when this law firm was processed as we scrape more and more pages from this insurance law firm directory website. What we're going to do here is, we're going to connect our Google Sheet credentials. Not going to cover that in this video, but I've done that in the past. Let me know in the comments if you do want to see a video specifically on this, but I'm going to continue forward for now. We're going to use the sheet within document resource, meaning we want to load some data from this law firm sheet within our main Google document. And then we're going to go ahead and pass in the ID of the Google Sheet we want to use. This can be found by going to Google Sheets in your browser, looking at the URL where it says /d/, and then go ahead and copy what you have between there and then either edit or view on the last part of the URL. And so everything you see here is going to be the ID of the Google Sheet we want to operate on. So you can take that, paste that into your template here, and that is going to correctly resolve the Google document and Google Sheet you're trying to operate on. Next, I'm going to select the law firms sheet from the list that we want to process. And so from before, we have both people we've scraped and the law firms we've processed. And so we want to make sure we're on that law firms tab. And finally, I'm going to build out a filter here for which item or row on this Google Sheet I want to load and check if it already exists. And so since we're just scraping firm names here, I'm going to look at the firm name column here and see if it already exists. And so I pass in JSON.name, which is going to be for one of the firms that we're looping over. We're passing the name in here, and we're going to try and get a row from that query on Google Sheets. We're going to get that firm and then do an if check to see if this firm exists or not. If this value is not empty, that means we were able to load up a row already that matches that firm name. And that means in our case, this firm has already been processed and we want to skip over it in order to avoid duplicating data or adding in duplicate leads to this full resulting worksheet here under people. And so if it's not empty, we are going to go ahead and skip out and move on to the next law firm we were able to scrape. If it's false, and so running this query on Google Sheets returned an empty object and nothing was there, that means we have not yet seen this law firm before, and we're ready to continue forward with this law firm and start processing it through the rest of the nodes we have here. So if it's false, we're still going to continue working with this firm because it's not yet been inserted into our Google Sheet. Moving on next, we're going to go ahead and search the internet, again, using Firecrawl for the firm's website. Firecrawl has a search operation here too. So if I click the dropdown, search and optionally scrape search results. What this is going to do, instead of scraping an individual website, it's going to make use of a search engine to go ahead and try and load up this law firm's website for a provided query. And that's exactly what we do. And so we're going to search the internet for this law firm, and the query we're building is going to be specified here. And so we're going to look to our iterate firms node. We're going to grab the name of the firm that we're currently processing by using the $ node and passing in the name of the node in order to get that data out. And then we're going to make this query a bit more advanced in order to restrict the location we're searching in to the city we were able to extract as well. It's very possible there's another Thompson Co. and Cousins LLP firm somewhere else on the internet. And so we want to restrict our search to the city that we were able to extract and scrape from this membership directory from before. Firecrawl Search has a bunch of different options you can do to configure your search query depending on your needs. I'm not going to go through all of them here, but once again, if you're trying to set this up for your own custom scrape operation, you can come to the docs, look for this search tab right here, and go through all of the different options they document in order to tune this for your specific needs. I just have the location specified for now, and again, am able to specify this by checking that use custom body toggle. I also set limit to 1 because I just want the first result, and I'm assuming that's going to be the firm's website by building this detailed search query. And so far for my use case, that's worked out pretty well for me. So we're going to execute this, search the firm, and then in our web results we get back, we're going to get a URL. Everything looks good, and we're able to continue to the next step. The next step here is going to be making an evaluation here on the data we're able to get from our search result. This is a simple LLM chain call where I'm trying to extract a decision on is this a law firm website or not based off of the scrape data from before. So I'll pull this up so you can see it. At the top part is a simple prompt. So given the following information from a search engine result page, I want you to make a decision if this website is for an individual law firm. If so, return an indicator set to true. If it is not, for example, if this is some kind of county courthouse or some kind of website for a local law jurisdiction, you should return false. And so we have that set up here, and then we're going to pass in the data we were able to extract from our search query before, such as the URL of the website, the title of the website, and the meta description of the website. So AI can make a decision here. It's like, hey, is this actually a law firm's website we want to do further processing on? And then down below, underneath attributes here, we're going to be returning a simple Boolean value, which is true or false, on is this a law firm's website or not. So this one was false. This does look like it's some other kind of directory here. And so we're not going to be able to do much processing from a separate directory. As we go forward, we're going to be able to get more details extracted later for real law firms And so we're not going to be able to do much here from a different directory. We're looking for single law firm websites that we're able to do additional processing on top of. Next, we're going to take that Boolean value, that indicator, if it is a law firm website, check if it's true or false, and make a decision on if we should continue forward to process that law firm, or if we should loop back here to our iterate firms loop to continue to our next law firm to look at. This one was false, and so we skipped over it. But if this was true, we then continue to our next step here, which is going to be writing a new row to our Google spreadsheet. So this is a Google Sheets node built into N8N. We're again using the sheet within a document resource. We're going to use the append row operation instead of get row. And everything else is pretty similar here until we get to values to send. We have our ID, we're going to insert into the law firm sheet. And then underneath here, when it comes to the data we're going to write and insert, we want to specify that we're going to map each column manually. This is something I like to do just to have more control and reduce errors as data is flowing through my systems. This is going to be our law firm sheet, once again, that has firm name, city, website, and our process date. And I'm going to go one by one through each of these columns and tell N8N what data needs to get set for each value. And so for firm name, we're using our iterate firms node to pull out the name of the current firm we're processing. We're going to do the same thing for our city. And so I can pull this up so you can see the city and the name values that are getting set right here. Underneath the website, we're going to look at our result for this search firm operation, and we're going to go ahead and grab the URL that we're able to grab from a real internet search. And so we look at the result of our search firm node. We're going to get the first value out of our web search result array, and we're going to run some regex here, which is a way just to clean up this URL a little bit more and always give us back to the home page of whatever website was returned. And so we just want to the home page, which would be here, assuming this was a firm we were trying to process. We just want everything up to this point in the URL instead of any of these subpaths or subfolders on the website we're looking at. And so that's what this does. It cleans it up a bit, and we can see that we're going from our input here under search firm that has the extra parts in the URL to outputting just the homepage of this website. Finally, I'm making note of a processed at date here where I format the current timestamp as year, month, day, just to make it a little bit easier for us to track and have a history of when each of these firms were processed on our crawling operation. So that's all there is to it, to go ahead and write this data out. And finally, we then call into our last node here to process an individual firm. This is going to be a sub workflow call. And so if I search for this for sub, we can use this execute sub workflow node, which is going to call into this green workflow we have defined right here. And so one by one, as we iterate over each of these firms and determine it is a good firm to process, once we get to the end here, we're going to pass off our firm details like the URL of that firm's website we were able to extract from before, and then finally the name of the firm into the sub workflow for future processing. And so once again, I want you to make note that since this is happening in a loop, for every single firm we were able to extract here that is a valid firm from this scrape operation, for each of those valid ones, we're going to go ahead and pass that into this green workflow one by one so we can execute this logic across all of those firms. And so if I had 15 firms here that were all valid firms, this green section here is going to run 15 times within this loop in order to extract all of the lawyers we're able to find on their directory, website, or any other profiles that they have listed on their law firm website. That covers it here for the yellow section and is what we're doing at a high level. Next, I'm going to go on to this green sub workflow here and show you how we process each firm website one by one. Let's now go into the two triggers we have set up here for processing an individual law firm's website, so we can go ahead and extract some lawyer leads out of it and do some additional AI processing on top of them all. As you may have noticed, there's actually two different triggers we have defined here, which is a pattern that I like to use when building and testing for clients that just makes it a little bit easier to get up and running. We have our form trigger up top, and if I pull this up, we're going to see we have a form element for the URL of the law firm we want to process. And then down below, we have another field here for the name of the firm we're going to process. If I pull up this trigger, that allows us to trigger the workflow from a parent workflow or some other workflow in the N8N. We're going to define the exact same inputs here where we have our URL and the name of the firm we want to process. Because these inputs have slightly different capitalization here, so we can see this is uppercase URL and this is lowercase URL, there is a little bit of data normalization we have to do in order to merge these two triggers together so it can work in both cases for getting called by another workflow or by manually clicking on this trigger here that's going to pull up a form for us. And so what I like to do in a case like this is make use of a set field node to go ahead and normalize this data so I have a single field I can reference for any properties I need to normalize. I have my domain defined right here and the firm defined here, and I'm going to use a JavaScript expression on both that allows me to check for our lowercase firm first, and if that doesn't exist, I'm going to then fall back to this value here, which is going to be our uppercase firm. If I pull up our domain here, we're following that exact same pattern, but with a little bit of extra regex, which allows us to go ahead and extract the domain of the website instead of the full URL. And so we're going to look here for the URL, lowercase URL first, and if that doesn't exist, we fall back to the uppercase URL, depending on which trigger is actually executing. And then we're going to take the result of this, use some regex to go ahead and match and extract any prefix on the URL itself. And so removing things like HTTP, HTTPS, just making sure we have this clean domain we're going to be able to use later on in the automation, because that's going to be an important field for later. Next up, we're then going to use firecall again and perform another search operation. This one is going to be a little bit more complex from what we did before up top, where we look for the firm website. In this case, if I pull this up, we're going to be looking for many different individual profile pages of lawyers, attorneys, professionals, associates that are found on a law firm's website. And so if I just go through this from top to bottom, we're going to be using the search and optionally scrape search results operation. And then we're going to build out a bit more of an advanced query here. The first thing to call out here is going to be this site : and then we insert the domain we extracted just from before. This is going to restrict the search we do to only return results from this www.mwllaw.com website. And so we're making sure we're not extracting lawyers from anywhere else. This is just like what you can do on Google with a site search operator. And so if I plug this in and scroll down, we're only getting results back from this website. So super important to set this up when we're crawling a website to make sure we're getting accurate leads for our client. The next part of the search query are going to be some keywords I'm looking for in order to extract individual profile pages. And so this is going to vary site to site for how different law firms set this up. And so I plugged in a number of different keywords in order to get a wide umbrella and capture every profile page that I possibly can. And so we specify attorney, partner, associate, lawyer, profile, and insurance because our client is specifically focused in insurance mediation. This is another keyword that allows us to kind of filter down the results we're getting back to people who are going to be most likely applicable and good leads for us to go forward with reaching out to. That's the gist of it here. This is something that's, it took me a couple iterations to get right and a lot of testing while building this out. Make sure you have a plan here for building out the search query you need to find this lead data in however format it's saved to for the website you're trying to scrape. What I'm getting at is there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. You should expect many iterations and some trial and error here to get this right. Moving forward, underneath the bottom here, when I specify additional properties, we're going to be once again configuring the request body to allow us to return many different results here. And so I'm limiting this to 50 right now. Depending on your scraping needs, how large or small scale it is, you may need to tweak this to be different for your use case or make use of some of these other options here provided in the firecall docs. So I would encourage you to go ahead and read through these so you know a little bit of what's possible when doing search and scrape operations just like this for any of your clients. Let's look at the results now. And so I have the table selected here. Our result was successful, and so I can scroll through this web results array and see everything that came back. We can see that we have some successful results here underneath this attorney profiles URL, and that looks like how they structured all of the different profile pages on this MWL legal site. And so this is the exact kind of page we're looking for to go ahead and scrape, and so this looks like it's working as expected. So we have attorney profiles, attorney profiles, attorney profiles, and then as we scroll to the bottom, we are getting some slightly irrelevant results that we're going to need to filter out later. But I'm starting wide And as we go on throughout the rest of this process, we're going to filter this down to make sure we're only getting the relevant lawyer profile pages for us to save as leads and then later analyze further. So that's step one. We're trying to get as many attorney profile pages as possible for future scraping. Step number two is going to be a little bit of data cleanup here, where we take our single result and split it out into 19 different items, which are the scrape search results. And so we're going to be looking at this data.web property, which is this array of all the results we got back. So we split those out, and then we start a new loop here for us to loop over and process each of these legal profile pages, or what we think are legal profile pages, one by one. The first part of this loop is going to be an LLM extract call, where we pass in some of the details of our page we're looking at, and we ask AI to make a decision. Is this an applicable legal profile page, or is it something that's not super relevant for us to even consider further? And so given the following information from a search engine result page, I want you to make a decision if the following and provided URL is an individual profile page for a lawyer, associate, partner, attorney, or attorney at a law firm. I'm wanting to only return and evaluate these individual profile pages for attorneys at law firms. Return true if that is the case. Otherwise, if this is something irrelevant, like a homepage or area of practice page for the whole firm, or something that is not related to an individual lawyer or attorney at the firm, you should return false. So then we insert the URL, the title, and meta description of the page that was extracted, and we're going to let Gemini 2.5 Flash make a decision here with all this data passed in. Is this applicable for us to continue forward or not? And so we have that defined here under attributes, is profile page. We give a brief description of what this indicator means, and we're going to let AI make a decision here if it's true or false. If it's true, we then continue forward. If false, we're going to skip over this result and continue to the next item in the batch that we want to loop over. So those 19 items that get put in, and depending on how many are actual profile pages, we're probably going to whittle that down to a smaller number of leads that are actually going to get saved and processed. Assuming our page we just evaluated is an individual attorney page, we're then going to move on to another Firecall node, which is going to go ahead and scrape that URL and get the contents back. Once again, I'm going to be making use of the extract feature on Firecall to get some structured data back from this page, just so it's going to be easier to work with inside of N8N, and I don't have to do any complex parsing or later extraction. I'm going to put this workload all in the hands of Firecall to do this for me. Our URL is going to be the URL of the profile page we're evaluating that gets passed in. We're going to specify that we want actually two different formats extracted this time. Markdown is going to be giving us back all text content found on the page in the form of Markdown. So that's going to be something that can easily be passed into an LLM later. And then we're also going to specify another item here with the type of JSON that once again allows us to pass this big prompt here for all of the data we want Firecall to extract from this single attorney profile page. And then we define the schema of everything we want extracted. This is the heavy lifting here of the scrape operation, where we're going from a page on the internet to all the lead data we need to get back. And so we define our first name, our last name, the phone number, email address, their position at the firm, what law firm it is, and we built out even an array of all of the areas of practice that this lawyer specializes in. And so if we look through here, this information is all listed on the page. We have their biography, we have their credentials, really anything that's relevant to this attorney, we want to get extracted for us to later save here in our lead gen database, which is now set up as a Google Sheet. And so we can see we're taking all those values that are going to be later saved, like first name, last name, phone number, email. Everything that we need to grab is getting captured here on this scrape operation. At the bottom, there's some more options I provide for, once again, only specifying that the main content should be returned. I'm going to ask Firecall to wait a little bit after the page loads, just in case there's any JavaScript executing that has hidden data we still want to evaluate. And then I do this other action here to further specify another wait. Just because there's a large range of websites we're going to see, I like to have these wait operations included here on this request, just to make the data I get back more reliable. So this was all specified again using this toggled on use custom body option for the Firecall node. Next up, we're going to look at try get person, which is going to be doing a similar spreadsheet operation to go ahead and get a row or rows out of our spreadsheet. This time, we're going to be looking at the people sheet of this same Google document and trying to see if there's already an existing lawyer or attorney that was found on the row, so we're able to skip it if they were found. And so what we do here is we define our people spreadsheet on our Google Documents ID, same as before. And then we're building out a little bit more of an advanced query this time, where we match on the lead's first name, last name, and the website profile URL that we're able to extract this lead from. We're going to use this combine filters option set to and, which just means that in order for us to get a match here, we have to have an equal value found on the spreadsheet for first name and last name and the website profile URL. If somebody has the same first name and last name, but they're listed on a different firm's website, so like John Brown or Jim Smith, like a common name, we're going to make sure that we're still able to process this lead if they are employed and working at a different law firm. Depending on your use case, you may need to structure this query a little bit differently, but that's how I thought through it for this specific lead gen workflow. So we're going to get our result here and then check if this person does exist or not. If the JSON result from try get person doesn't return anything, that means that person doesn't exist yet and we want to continue forward with the rest of the workflow. If they do exist, that means this lead has already been processed and we don't want to duplicate it anymore. So if they do exist, we're going to get out of here and skip on to the next person on our URLs list that we scraped from before. If they don't exist, we then continue through the final steps of this automation here in green. The next one we have here is going to be another LLM call where we evaluate and extract some details from this page and use AI to make a decision if this is a relevant profile for the person we're trying to build leads for. Since our client here is a mediation lawyer specifically focused in insurance, we're building out a prompt here that really is able to distill down the ideal lead target we're trying to capture and then eventually reach out to. And so we define some context here, like I want you to carefully analyze the provided details from an attorney's profile page and make a decision if their profile is a strong match or not a strong match for the person we're working with. And so then we get into expanding what is a strong match, what's not a strong match, so the AI has a good example to go off of. And then at the bottom here, we're building out the section where we dynamically insert the data for each individual profile page. And so as we loop through these attorney profiles, this gets replaced and inserted with the new attorney details. And so we have URL, title, description, their firm, their information such as first name, last name, and their position. And finally, we build out this list of all of the areas of practice they specialize in. And just for good measure, at the bottom, I'm inserting all of the scraped page content we were able to pull in from before by using Firecrawl. And so we build up this really good context window here so our AI can make a decision on, is this a good lead match we can later outreach to, or is this maybe someone we want to skip over? Down below, we have a single attribute that is going to define if this is a strong match for our client or not. After that's done, we then move on to the last part here, which was a specific requirement for our client to go ahead and draft an email that's going to be easy for them to copy and paste and send out as new leads come in. And so this is a simple template we had set up here where we just fill out some markdown of what email they were already sending out before, and we just dynamically insert the name of the lead we just scraped, and so we can have this handy. After that gets inserted, we do a couple of different data processing and data cleanup nodes here where we convert that markdown into HTML, use the set field node to specify some Google document values like the folder, the document name, and the HTML content that needs to get created for this Google Doc. And then we do some data cleanup where we take all of that markdown content, the other inputs from before, and process this to get it into a clean, ready-to-use format that's going to work well with Google's API. And finally, we make a single HTTP request here into Google's API where we upload a new file with all of that content and metadata we cleaned up from before to create a new file for us. And so that's just a single HTTP post request hooked up to our existing Google Drive credentials. We're going to pass in that data we prepared in those previous couple of steps. Since that's successful, we're going to see we get an ID back here with the name of the file, the ID of the file, and other metadata for the document we just created. And so if I go to the Google Sheet now, we're going to see that for every person and every lead we were able to extract, we have this nicely formatted document that contains all of the email content for our clients to go ahead and copy and paste into Gmail. And so they can start batch sending out these cold emails. The final thing to cover here is going to be the step where we actually go forward and insert all of this data we've prepared from before into our Google Sheet. I know I previewed the Google Doc a little bit early, but we're going to get everything inserted here on this last step. And so if I pull this up, this is once again a Google Sheets, a built-in Google Sheet node from N8N, and we're going to be using the append row operation once again. So we specify that. We have our same Google Doc ID specified here, and at this time, we're going to be using the from list and select our people sheet that we're going to be inserting these leads into. I like to use and map each column manually, so I have finer grain control over the result that gets inserted. First name, we're going to be using the first name that was scraped out from the profile. Last name, exact same thing, as well as for all of the other contact information, other metadata such as email address, position, firm. We're using everything from this scrape profile page node to be able to set here on what gets inserted. Scrolling down, as we go forward a little bit further, we have these two columns called is areas of practice match and is individual email. That's going to be where we grab the result from these two LLM node calls here, where we evaluate their profile and determine if they have good contact credentials that we would be comfortable with reaching out to. We're grabbing results of that to insert either a true or false value here if those are a good match or not. And so if I come back here to Google Sheets, that's where we have this all inserted here. Scrolling down, we finally then have the process that date, much like what we did for our individual law firms that we were inserting. And finally, coming down to the bottom here, I am including a link here to the email we just drafted and created in Google Docs. And so we're going to go ahead and use this base URL here for Google Documents. That's always going to be the same. And then we're just going to dynamically insert the ID of the document that was just created. So as we process these leads one by one, we're going to get a new email draft set up here that is specifically tailored for the lead we just processed. So this makes it easier for our clients to go ahead and just copy and paste this email, load it up into Gmail or whatever email software they're using to send this off, and that's going to do the heavy lifting for them. That concludes the final note here for processing an individual person on the law firm. As you recall from before, this is set up in a loop, and so this process and chain of all of these nodes running here is going to run once for every single individual attorney we were able to find off the internet that belongs to the site we provided here and matches these search terms. And so if it's a large law firm, we could see several dozens of attorneys that get extracted here, processed, and saved into Google Sheets for all of our leads to later be reached out to. That concludes the technical walkthrough here for what we've built on this lead gen system. Of course, every business is going to be a little bit different depending on what the client's requirements are. Like David mentioned before, this is something that needs to be extracted in Discovery because every business process is going to be ran a little bit differently, and it's up to you to uncover that and what's the best for your client.
All right, before you go, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Seriously, do it, because we're going to be breaking down all of the AI automations that we use to run all of our businesses. They're super helpful, and we're going to break down exactly how we do them on this YouTube channel. So make sure to like and then subscribe, and then you'll get notified when we publish new workflows that can make your businesses run 20 times more efficiently, just like we're seeing here at the recap and the other businesses that we're running. The other item is join our school community for free. The link's in the description. You'll be able to get this template, this automation that we just ran through in this video, completely for free. You can go to school and navigate to the video that you want, and then you can download the JSON output for the N8N automation. With that, you can upload it into your N8N, clone it, and then tune it for your business and your use cases. So like and subscribe, join our free community to get this automation for yourself, and we'll see you in the next video.